The coffee pot shattered against the diner floor at exactly 6:17 in the morning, and Sarah Morgan knew it was going to be one of those days. Hot liquid spread across the cracked linoleum in a dark puddle that looked too much like the balance in her checking account, empty and getting emptier by the second. "I'm so sorry," she mumbled, grabbing the mop from the storage closet, her hands trembling from exhaustion. This was her fifth double shift this week at the Pine Valley Diner, and her body was forgetting what sleep felt like. The muscles in her lower back screamed with every movement, a constant reminder that at 32 she already felt twice her age. "Sarah, honey, you need to slow down." Martha Wilson placed a weathered hand on her shoulder. The older woman had owned this diner for nearly 3 decades, and her kind eyes had witnessed every kind of struggle walk through those doors. "You're going to work yourself into the ground. Can't afford to slow down." Sarah didn't look up as she mopped, pushing the brown liquid toward the drain. "Rent's due in 3 days, and I'm still 200 short. Plus, Ethan needs his asthma medication refilled, and the insurance is giving me grief again." Martha sighed, the sound heavy with understanding. "That boy is growing like a weed. 7 already, isn't he? 8 next month." Sarah straightened, dumping the dirty water into the industrial sink. Her son's birthday was another worry for another day. How was she supposed to afford a proper celebration when she could barely keep the lights on? From the corner of the diner came a low whine. Rusty, her aging golden retriever mix, lifted his head from his designated spot near the kitchen. The diner health code made exceptions for Martha's therapy dog assistant, a creative classification that allowed Sarah to bring him to work on early shifts when no one else could watch him. "Even Rusty thinks you need a break," Martha said with a gentle smile. The morning rush trickled in, mostly loggers and mill workers with calloused hands who ordered black coffee and eggs over easy. Sarah moved through the familiar rhythm. Take orders, pour coffee, deliver plates, smile even when her face felt like it might crack from the effort. Through the diner's front window, she could see the main street of Pine Valley, Oregon, a town so small you could drive through it in under 3 minutes. The lumber mill that used to be the town's heartbeat had downsized years ago. Right around the time Ethan was born, right around the time her husband Mark decided fatherhood wasn't for him and disappeared into whatever hole cowards crawl into. Most young folks had left after the mill cutbacks. The ones who stayed were either too stubborn or too broke to go anywhere else. Sarah fell firmly into the latter category. By noon, her shift should have ended, but Denise called in sick, which meant Sarah was staying until closing. She called Martha, who watched Ethan after school. "No problem, dear." Martha's kind voice crackled through the phone. "He's welcome to stay for dinner. I'm making pot roast. Rusty can stay too." "Thank you. I'll pick them up around 9. Sarah hung up, guilt settling in her stomach like a stone. Her son spent more time with the 74-year-old widow next door than with his own mother. The afternoon dragged on. Sarah's thoughts drifted as she wiped down tables and refilled salt shakers. She thought about Ethan's laugh, the way his eyes lit up when he talked about dinosaurs. She thought about the stack of bills on her kitchen counter, growing taller every week. She thought about the rattling noise her Honda was making, the one the mechanic said would cost $800 to fix. At 3:15, the mailman walked in. Jimmy Crawford had been delivering mail in Pine Valley for nearly 20 years and knew everyone's business. "Got something for you, Sarah." He handed her a thick cream-colored envelope, the kind made of expensive paper. "Looks official." The return address read, "Wilford and Associates, Attorneys at Law, Portland, Oregon." Sarah's stomach dropped. Collection agency? No, they sent regular mail, not fancy envelopes. Her hand shook slightly as she tore it open. "Dear Ms. Morgan, this letter serves as official notification that you have been named as the sole beneficiary in the estate of Edward Morgan, deceased. Mr. Morgan passed away on the 16th of July, 2024. As his niece and only living relative, you are entitled to inherit his property holdings in Pine Valley, Oregon. The property consists of approximately 12 acres of forested land." Sarah stopped reading. Uncle Edward. She had to dig through childhood memories to remember his face, a tall, wiry man with a salt and pepper beard and intense eyes who'd visited occasionally when she was young. He'd taught her to identify wildflowers and mushrooms during long walks in the forest, explaining how everything was connected in ways most people never noticed. Her mother had later explained that Edward was her father's brother, that he'd always been different, a Korean War veteran who lived alone in the woods like some kind of hermit. The family had lost touch with him after a bitter argument about environmental activism when Sarah was 10. She'd heard rumors he had died years ago, apparently not until recently. "Everything okay?" Martha appeared at her elbow, concerned. I, I inherited something from my Uncle Edward." "Well, that's good news, isn't it?" Sarah kept reading. The letter mentioned she needed to come to their Portland office to sign paperwork, but the property was legally hers as of now. 12 acres of forested land. Her mind immediately calculated. Could she sell it? How much would 12 acres be worth? Enough to pay rent? Fix the car? Give Ethan a birthday party with more than just a grocery store cake? The letter continued with details about the property's location and a strange final paragraph. "Please note that Mr. Morgan left specific instructions regarding the property. We have been unable to conduct a full survey of the land due to its remote location and the unusual nature of the structures, if any, built upon it. We recommend you visit the property at your earliest convenience. Enclosed is a hand-drawn map to the primary landmark as indicated in Mr. Morgan's will." Structures? The property had buildings? Sarah unfolded the second page, a photocopied map showing a route from Highway 18 down a logging road to a spot marked with an X and the words "The Redwood." That Saturday morning, Sarah stood at her kitchen window, cradling a chipped mug of coffee. It was her first day off in nearly 2 weeks, and instead of catching up on sleep, she was preparing to hunt down her uncle's mysterious property. "Mom, are we going on the adventure today?" Ethan appeared in the doorway, his brown hair sticking up in all directions, Rusty faithfully at his heels. "Yes, dinosaur boy. Just as soon as you eat breakfast." His face lit up. "Is it like a treasure hunt?" Sarah smiled. "Kind of. We're going to look at some land that belonged to your great-uncle Edward." "What's a great-uncle?" "He was my father's brother, your grandfather's brother." "Did he live in the forest like a mountain man?" Ethan's eyes widened with excitement. "Sort of," Sarah laughed. "He was different, special. He taught me about plants when I was little, not much older than you." They set out at 9:30 in the Honda, which thankfully started on the first try today. Rusty sat in the back seat, head hanging out the window, his gray muzzle lifted to catch the scents of the forest. Sarah followed Highway 18 north, then turned onto Old Mill Road, a rutted dirt path that hadn't seen maintenance in years. The car bounced and groaned over potholes. Trees pressed in on either side, Douglas firs and redwoods that stretched up toward a gray winter sky. "Are we there yet?" Ethan asked for the third time. "Almost." According to the map, she needed to watch for a fallen log with a blue blaze painted on it. She almost missed it, but spotted the faded mark at the last second. She turned onto what was barely a path, more like a suggestion of where a road used to be. Branches scraped against the Honda's sides, and Sarah winced, hoping she wasn't adding a new paint job to her list of expenses. After another quarter-mile of careful driving, the path ended in a small clearing. Sarah parked and turned off the engine. "Come on, buddy, we're walking from here." The forest was quiet except for the drip of moisture from leaves and the distant call of a woodpecker. Sarah held Ethan's hand as they followed a narrow trail marked by occasional stones painted white. Rusty trotted ahead, sniffing intently as if he knew where they were going. And then she saw it. "Whoa," Ethan breathed. At first, Sarah thought it was a small hill covered in moss, but as they got closer, she realized it was a tree stump, or rather what remained of a tree so enormous it defied belief. The stump was easily 25 feet across, a redwood of incredible age that must have been cut down long ago. The wood was weathered to silver gray, carved by time and rain into ridges and valleys. Moss covered most of it in a thick carpet of green, and small ferns grew from cracks in the surface. "How big was the tree?" Ethan whispered. I don't know. Huge. Probably hundreds of years old. They walked around it, and that's when Sarah saw the door. It wasn't like any door she'd ever seen. Carved directly into the side of the stump, it stood about 6 feet tall and 4 feet wide, made of the same silvered wood, intricately decorated with carvings that looked like roots or veins, organic patterns that seemed to flow across the surface. An iron handle, black with age, protruded from the center. Is someone living in the tree? Ethan asked, his voice hushed. Sarah approached slowly, her heart hammering. This was Edward's doing. It had to be. She reached out and touched the carvings. They were smooth under her fingers, worn by weather but clearly crafted with incredible skill. Some of the patterns seemed to form words or symbols she didn't recognize. She pulled the handle. The door resisted at first, swollen from moisture, but then swung inward with a groan of wood against wood. Cool air rushed out, carrying the scent of earth and something else. Something ancient and green and alive. Rusty whined, backing away slightly, then cautiously stepped forward, sniffing the air. Stay close to me, Sarah told Ethan, pulling out her phone and turning on the flashlight. The doorway opened into darkness. Sarah stepped inside, sweeping the light around. The beam revealed a space about 8 feet across, circular, with walls made entirely of wood. Smooth, polished wood that gleamed in the light. But it wasn't flat wood. The walls were carved from the tree's interior, following the natural curve of the growth rings. And in the center of the floor was another door. This one horizontal, set into what looked like a wooden platform. No, not a door, a hatch. Sarah knelt beside it, brushing away a layer of dust and dead leaves that had blown in over time. The hatch had another iron handle, and carved into the wood around it were words. What grows below holds more than roots. Mom, I don't like this, Ethan whispered, pressed against her side. Sarah didn't like it either, but curiosity pulled her forward. She grabbed the handle and lifted. The hatch was heavy but balanced on hinges that barely squeaked. Below was a spiral staircase carved from the same seamless wood, descending into darkness. The steps looked solid, though each one was worn smooth in the center from use. We're going down there. Ethan's voice was very small. Just a quick look. If it's scary, we'll come right back up. Deal? Deal. Sarah went first, testing each step before putting her full weight on it. Rusty followed cautiously behind them, his claws clicking softly on the wooden stairs. The stairs spiraled down, around and around, the walls pressing close. Her phone's light revealed intricate carvings everywhere. Animals, trees, rivers, mountains, all flowing together in an endless pattern. The air grew cooler as they descended, but it wasn't the cold of a cellar. It was the cool of deep earth, of places where the sun never reached but life still somehow existed. After what felt like forever but was probably only a minute, the stairs ended. Sarah stepped into a room and froze. Oh my God, she whispered. The space was vast, far too large to be underneath just the stump. The room was circular, at least 40 feet across, with a ceiling that rose to a dome 20 feet above. Every surface, walls, floor, ceiling, was made of wood, not planks or boards, but solid, continuous wood, carved and shaped from what must have been the tree's entire root system. The walls followed organic curves, swelling and narrowing like the inside of a living organism. Root-like structures arched across the ceiling like the ribs of a cathedral, and from these hung what looked like crystals. No, not crystals. Sarah looked closer. They were pieces of amber, dozens of them, and they glowed with a soft golden light that illuminated the entire space. How are they glowing? Ethan asked, pointing up. Sarah had no idea. The amber pieces weren't connected to any wires or electricity. They just glowed. The room was furnished sparsely. Against one wall stood a workbench covered in tools, chisels, saws, planes, all arranged neatly. Shelves carved directly into the walls held books, jars, and boxes. A simple bed frame made of branches stood in one corner, though the mattress had long since rotted away. A table and two chairs occupied the center of the room, and on the table were journals, 5 of them, bound in leather, stacked neatly. Sarah walked over on trembling legs. Dust covered everything, suggesting no one had been here in years. She picked up the top journal and opened it. The handwriting inside was neat, careful, the writing of someone who had time and took pride in the act of putting pen to paper. June 3rd, 1989. The root house is finished. 27 years I've worked on this place, and today I carved the final panel in the great room. My hands are old now, gnarled as the roots I've shaped, but the work is done. I built this place to prove something, that we can live with the forest, not just in it or off it. Every inch of this house came from one tree, the ancient one that was already dying when I found it. Instead of letting it rot or watching some company cut it up for lumber, I gave it new purpose. Its roots go down 140 feet. I followed them all. I carved chambers from its body, turned its decay into dwelling. My brother called me crazy. The whole town did. But they don't understand. This isn't madness. This is legacy. Sarah flipped through more pages, skimming entries about construction techniques, about the amber pieces. Apparently, they were sap deposits from the ancient tree, somehow preserved and crystallized, about Edward's philosophy of returning wealth to the land. Then she found an entry that made her blood run cold. August 19th, 1992. They came again. The Harringtons. They've heard stories about the house, about what I might have hidden here. Fools. They think there's treasure down here, actual gold or silver or money. They don't understand that the treasure is the house itself. But they're dangerous, these men. They threatened me, said they'd tear this place apart to find what they're looking for. I've set protections. Anyone who means harm to the root house will find only confusion in its halls. The roots remember who belongs and who doesn't. Sarah closed the journal, her skin prickling. What did that mean? Were people going to come looking for treasure? And what protections? She looked around the room again, seeing it with new eyes. This wasn't just a weird hobbit hole in the woods. This was... She didn't even have words for what this was. Art, architecture, magic. Mom, look! Ethan had wandered to one wall where he discovered a door, or rather an opening covered by a curtain made of woven willow branches. Sarah pushed through the curtain and found another room, smaller, with more shelves and more boxes. This appeared to be storage. She opened one box and found jars of preserved food, long since spoiled. Another held candles. A third contained papers, letters, documents, photographs. One photograph showed a younger Edward standing in front of the stump, grinning broadly, holding a saw. On the back was written, "Beginning the work, May 15th, 1962. 1962. He'd started this more than 60 years ago. He'd spent most of his adult life building this place. As they explored further, Rusty trotting beside them with unusual alertness, Sarah and Ethan discovered 5 rooms in total, all connected by curved corridors that followed old root channels. There was the great room where they'd entered, 2 smaller rooms that might have been bedrooms or workshops, a room filled with books and journals, and a strange chamber at the very end that was entirely empty except for a single root that descended from ceiling to floor. This root, as thick as Sarah's thigh, had words spiraling around it, from seed to soil to seed again. The circle turns. What was taken must be given. What was given will return. It's like a church, Ethan whispered, his voice echoing in the empty chamber. Yes, Sarah agreed. It is. Returning to the great room, Sarah found a small panel in the wall that seemed slightly different. She pushed it, revealing a narrow passage. The passage led to a chamber containing 5 wooden chests. With trembling hands, she opened the first. Inside were gold bars, dozens of them stamped with U.S. Treasury, 1933. Each bar weighed at least 25 pounds. All 5 chests contained the same treasure. Sarah sank to the floor, overwhelmed. If this was real, it was worth millions. In a hidden filing cabinet nearby, she found ledgers documenting the Harrington Mining Company's fraud, worker exploitation, and bribery of officials during the 1930s. A letter from Edward explained everything. I worked for the Harrington's mine in 1931. They paid workers pennies while getting rich. My best friend Joe died in a shaft collapse after reporting unsafe conditions. When Roosevelt ordered all gold surrendered to the government in 1933, the Harringtons hid their richest deposits in a warehouse. I took some, not all, and I took these books as evidence of their crimes. I built this house to keep both safe, to let the wealth rest quietly, harming no one. Sarah's world tilted. Her eccentric uncle hadn't been crazy. He'd been a whistleblower, a man who couldn't stand by while others were exploited for profit. Rusty's urgent barking interrupted her thoughts. From above came the sound of footsteps. Someone had found the entrance. Over the next few weeks, Sarah made a life-changing decision. Rather than selling the land, she and Ethan would move into the root house temporarily to save on rent. The transition wasn't easy. They needed to haul water from town, set up solar panels for minimal electricity, and brave the winter chill that penetrated even the thick wooden walls. Yet there was something magical about waking up beneath the amber lights, watching Ethan's delight as he explored every carved detail, and feeling Rusty's newfound energy as he patrolled their unusual domain. Martha helped them settle in, bringing supplies and sharing her knowledge of off-grid living from her youth in rural Maine. Sarah spent evenings reading Edward's journals, learning about his life and the careful construction of the root house. He'd been a talented carpenter before the Korean War, but returned with invisible wounds that drove him to seek solace in the forest. The root house became his therapy, his art, and ultimately his legacy. But the peace couldn't last. After researching the Harrington family at the local library, Sarah discovered they were still powerful, though struggling financially. Victor Harrington, the grandson of the original mine owner, had turned the family business toward resort development, often through questionable means. One evening, as winter winds howled outside, Victor himself appeared at the root house door with his associate, James Renner. They offered to buy the property for $500,000, far more than market value. This land would make an excellent addition to our resort development plans, Victor explained smoothly, his gaze lingering on Sarah's jacket pocket where a gold bar was concealed. Sarah refused, sensing their true motives. The men left, but their presence had disturbed something deep within the root house. That night, Sarah felt the wooden walls vibrate slightly beneath her touch, as if the house itself had awakened. 2 nights later, Victor and 3 men returned under cover of darkness. Sarah and Ethan hid in the innermost chamber while the intruders searched for the gold. As they began prying at the walls with crowbars, the root house responded. The wooden walls rippled like water. Amber lights flared brilliantly. Root-like tendrils emerged from the walls, grasping at the intruders. The men fled in terror, but James Renner collapsed outside, dead from an apparent heart attack. The others escaped in their vehicle. Sarah anonymously reported the body, but didn't explain the circumstances. The official ruling was heart failure, possibly drug-related, while trespassing on private property. Shaken but determined, Sarah contacted Becca Chen, an investigative journalist known for exposing corporate corruption. Sarah shared Edward's evidence of the historical Harrington crimes, along with 1 gold bar as proof. Becca was stunned by the story's potential impact. If these records are authentic, they document not just fraud and labor violations, but potentially manslaughter. Even after all these years, this could destroy the Harrington Company. Working with Dr. Eleanor Foster from the Oregon Historical Society, they carefully documented the root house's architectural significance and the historical context of Edward's gold theft, framing it as an act of whistleblowing against corporate exploitation. The story broke in the Portland Tribune. Depression-era corporate crimes exposed through hidden records. Becca's article detailed the Harrington Mining Company's exploitation of workers, tax fraud, and bribery, meticulously documented in their own ledgers. It mentioned the gold theft only as an act by a disillusioned worker, with no details about the gold's current location. The impact was immediate. The Harrington Development Company's stock plummeted. Victor Harrington faced public scrutiny and investor flight. Through a complex legal process that Becca helped navigate, the gold, worth over $10 million, was classified as abandoned historical property rather than stolen goods. A settlement divided its value, 20% to Oregon for historical preservation, 30% to a trust for the descendants of Harrington mining workers, and 50% to a foundation Sarah would establish. 6 months later, Victor Harrington approached Sarah with an unexpected proposal. His once confident demeanor was diminished, his face lined with stress. "I want to make amends," he said quietly, "not just for my grandfather's actions, but for my own. The root house, what happened there, it changed me. I felt something wake up in those walls, something older and wiser than any of us." He offered to contribute what remained of the Harrington assets to Sarah's foundation, focusing on environmental restoration and community revitalization. In return, he asked only to participate in redirecting the Harrington legacy toward healing rather than harm. After careful consideration, Sarah agreed. The Morgan Legacy Foundation combined the gold proceeds with the Harrington assets, dedicated to restoring forests, supporting sustainable community development, and preserving historical sites that told the full story of Oregon's complex past. The Root House became the cornerstone of this effort. Carefully preserved under Dr. Foster's guidance, it became an educational center where visitors learned about sustainable construction, forest ecology, and labor history. 5 years later, Pine Valley had transformed. The old lumber mill was now a community center, offering job training and health services. Tourism brought new life to the town as people visited the Root House Sanctuary, but careful management kept it sustainable and educational. Sarah now managed both the foundation and a small auto repair shop in town. Ethan, 13 and passionate about environmental science, guided younger children through the Root House chambers. Rusty, elderly but still vital, remained the sanctuary's unofficial guardian. On the 5th anniversary of their discovery, Sarah walked alone to the Root House at dawn. She made her way to a small chamber few visitors ever saw. A perfect oval space with walls of polished root and a ceiling of interwoven root fibers like lace. In the center of this room was a depression in the floor, shaped exactly like a gold bar. Sarah placed the last bar, the one she had kept for Ethan's education but never needed to use, into this space. Early morning light filtered through a small shaft in the ceiling, striking the gold and casting warm reflections throughout the chamber. "It's done, Uncle Edward," she whispered. "The gold has returned to where it belongs, not buried and hoarded, but working to heal what was broken." As she spoke, tiny green shoots emerged from the wooden walls. New growth, impossible in dead wood, yet unmistakably there. Outside, redwood seedlings had begun to grow from the roots of their ancient parent, a rare regeneration that amazed botanists. Sarah exited to find Ethan waiting with Rusty resting contentedly at his feet. Together they watched the sunrise painting the forest in shades of gold. "Mom," Ethan said suddenly, "I've been thinking about studying forestry or environmental science. I want to understand how all this works. What Uncle Edward started." Sarah squeezed his hand, feeling tears prick her eyes. "He would be proud of you. I'm proud of you." "The money could have made us rich in a normal way," Ethan observed. "We could have had a mansion or fancy cars. And would that have made us happier?" Ethan looked around at the sanctuary they'd built, at the renewed town beyond, at old Rusty dozing in the morning sun. "No, this is better. We're rich in the ways that matter." As they walked back toward town, Sarah thought about her journey from that desperate day when she dropped the coffee pot in the diner. Some choices had scared her at the time. Some still did. But looking at her son, watching the forest wake around them, thinking about the community they'd helped rebuild, she knew she'd choose the same path again. Edward had written in his journals that the poorest people he knew were those who had money but nothing else. No connection to land, to community, to something larger than themselves. Real wealth, he said, was measured in relationships, in meaningful work, in the legacy you leave behind. Through the windows of the community center, Sarah could see people gathering for a job training workshop, mothers with young children heading to the free daycare, elderly folks meeting for coffee, all of it funded by gold that had been stolen, hidden, fought over, and finally returned to its true purpose, serving life. Behind them, the root house stood solid and alive, its amber lights glowing softly in the chambers below, its roots extending into the earth, nurturing new growth from ancient wisdom. Some treasures are meant to heal, not hoard. Sarah had learned that lesson well.